I love BMW, and frankly I'm sick of acting like I don't. I know this channel is built on Mustangs and self-deprecating jokes, but in reality I'm just a little Azerbaijani boy dreaming of owning a BMW like my forefathers. But there's something off about these German automakers. You see, while other companies report their new car specs to the T, BMW lies, and it's not just a one-off thing. In a majority of their new cars, horsepower, 0 to 60 times, and quarter miles are severely underrated. While some people give their guesses in forums and others yap about some crap their uncle who's a mechanic told them, I'm here to Sherlock this debacle and get us a definite answer on why. To make sure you're familiar with an example of BMW being dirty liars, let's look at this article by CarBuzz. BMW claims the new M4 CS takes 3.4 seconds to go from 0 to 60 in perfect conditions. CarBuzz was lent a CS, and when testing on an unprepped track, they were able to go from 0 to 60 in 3.19 seconds, over 2/10 or 5% quicker than what BMW stated. But the chicanery doesn't end there. BMW, or for my German friends, Bayerische Motorenwerke, reported the M4 CS does 62 to 124 miles per hour in 7.7 seconds. Again, with imperfect conditions, CarBuzz did this feat in just 6.92 seconds. Finally, they were also able to reach a top speed 7 miles per hour higher than what's reported on the brochure. Things aren't adding up, and I don't like it. BMW has been known to do this with nearly every turbocharged car they've produced since the 2000s, and I place emphasis on the turbocharged part, because for the past 2 decades, any of their cars that are naturally aspirated have been pretty damn accurate when it comes to specs. So what's going on? Okay, sure, we have an example of BMW lying about their horsepower ratings, but how did they even measure it in the first place? Prior to 1971, all car manufacturers used the SAE gross horsepower rating system. This was a peculiar method to be sure, and basically had them put their engine on a testing stand without any accessories like air filters, water pumps, alternators, and then they just push it to the max and see what number they got. Obviously, while it sounds fun, it doesn't give an accurate representation of the car's specs, because in reality, you'd always have those accessories on the car which were known to reduce the car's output by roughly 25%. This is why if you look at horsepower numbers from the 70s, they're ridiculous compared to today's standards. A 1970 Chevelle was listed at 450 horsepower, while a 2025 Mustang GT barely cracks that. Now manufacturers use the SAE net horsepower rating system, which has the engine completely attached to its necessary accessories and it's inside the car as well, making for a much more realistic representation of the car's abilities. Still, this doesn't explain why BMW engines specifically are the ones underestimating, while everyone else has it pretty dead on. Well, there are actually 3 reasons, and they're a bit more sinister than it first seems. The first and most obvious is as simple as BMW doesn't want to get sued or even catch flack when the numbers they state can't be consistently reproduced. If I buy a car that boasts 420 horsepower and every time I dyno it, it only shows 380, you better believe the crank hub isn't going to be the only thing blowing up that day. Doing something like this runs BMW the risk of a false advertising lawsuit, and a company with many owners who pay attention to specs and are true enthusiasts will surely have a bone to pick with these German schemers. This is also elevated because of elevation. I mentioned at the beginning that it's mostly BMW's turbocharged engines that are lied about. Well, these turboed engines face extreme drop-offs in performance at elevation. For reference, this is a little chart I found. At 6,000 feet, a turbocharged engine loses roughly 9.1% power on average, and at 14,000 feet, you're losing nearly 20%. This is because as the air gets thinner and less oxygen is available for the engine to suck in, you lose power because your air-to-fuel ratio becomes less favorable. Basically, BMW doesn't want to rate their car to have 400 horsepower, and when a Nepali Sherpa buys an M4 that only has 340, he sues them for false advertising. The second reason is a bit sneaky, and I had to call in the big guns to figure this one out.
Alright, so right now I'm going to FaceTime my dad, and hopefully he can explain to us the benefits that come with BMW lying to the European government about their specs. Hey, Pop.
Seymour, let me hear you correct right now. You doing another YouTube? You telling me you have OChem exam and you doing the YouTube? Not mama, not me, not your sisters, nobody watch that shit, man. And make sure you'll be good doctor, no more bullshit. Actually, go stand in corner and wait there, you piece of shit.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no. We just joke around.
Car insurance in America is based off of many factors: number of doors, size of engine, and horsepower output. If you have a low horsepower car, your insurance rates will be significantly lower. My dad gets mad at me because of the insurance he pays on my 5.0, but I think he's just jealous he's not a real man with a manual V8. Well, in Europe, the insurance rates increase 5 times more if you have a high horsepower car. So BMW purposely lowers their reported specs so insurance companies don't charge the owners as much. On one hand, this is very noble and almost Robin Hood-like of BMW. On the other hand, it's purely so more people are able to buy their cars. It's just business, baby. Many companies actually have done this in the past, and laws are instated to stop manufacturers like Saab, who are notorious for doing it. The company itself also gets taxed when horsepower figures are high. Things like emissions, noise, and being sick as hell are looked down upon in Europe, and they tend to penalize companies who try to get away with it. The final reason is very odd, and it seems almost too obvious. Whereas many companies build one car and have maybe 2 or 3 trims for it, BMW is different. They have about 600 trims for each car in their lineup, and on top of that, they have 700 different cars. The best-selling BMW model is the 3 Series. How many 3 Series trims are there? 8. When you have 8 trims of one car model, there better be enough to differentiate them so people buy exactly the right car for them. BMW is generally considered a luxury performance brand, so how do they differentiate them? They obviously have a nicer interior the higher up you go, but also they give a respectable gap of performance reports between cars. This way, the guy who bought the M3 can tell the M340 guy he has 100 more horsepower than him, and all he has to do to prove it is go on Google. But in reality, the xDrive M340 has a quicker 0 to 60 than the base model M3. The average person who buys these cars isn't going to take their car to a drag strip and race them, nor will they look up tested times. What BMW says is fair play to them, and frankly that 100 horsepower difference is enough to make a guy with 60 grand go for the M3 over the M340, regardless of which one is technically quicker. In simpler terms, BMW makes the M340 look worse so more people buy the M3. Simple, that's more money for them. And that, my friends, are the reasons that BMW lies. So the next time you go to buy a BMW, don't just trust what the brochure says. See what real owners say. After all, they're not the ones selling the